I secretly visited my parents while my husband was away. 3 incredible secrets revealed. Sarah gazed out at the sprawling cityscape of Chicago from her high-rise office, the glass facade reflecting her image as a sharp-dressed attorney, enmeshed in the reality of her hectic career. Behind the poised exterior, unease churned within. As the relentless clamor of deadlines approached, the air felt heavy with his expectations, to be a diligent lawyer by day and a supportive wife by night. Yet a pang of guilt gnawed at her heart, a constant reminder of her aging parents back in Maplewood, Illinois. In their small town, they watched her ascent without her, feeling abandoned for the ambition she had chosen. With her husband out of town on a business trip, Sarah felt the tug of freedom. This tranquil moment in a bustling city posed an unexpected opportunity. She took a deep breath, nearly tasting the bittersweet nostalgia. And suddenly, she wasn't just an accomplished attorney. She was a daughter aching to reconnect with her past. The thought of heading back to her childhood home sent a brief surge of excitement through her. But could she really step away from the polished image she had constructed? As Sarah entered the familiar embrace of her childhood home, she felt a mix of warmth and regret. The cozy living room, adorned with family heirlooms, deepened the ache inside her. This place held echoes of laughter and love, but also weighed heavily with unfulfilled obligations. She ascended to her mother's attic, drawn by an unseen force. And there it was, a dusty box, old and worn, containing her grandmother's journal. The moment she opened it, she realized the strength of the words within, stories revealing struggles for acceptance in a world that quashed women's voices. Tears stung her eyes as she read, resonating deeply with her own battles in the male-dominated legal field. The gravity of familial commitment bore down on her as she unearthed a collection of letters penned by her father. His unwavering loyalty and sacrifices for family stability struck a chord deep within her, every word a testament to hard work, love, and duty. Was her relentless pursuit of ambition tempting her to lose sight of these values? Her corporate ascent often strained her moral compass, leading her to question every decision. She felt a stark contrast between her father's dedication and her life in the city, where personal sacrifices felt nothing less than a betrayal of lofty goals. But then, Sarah stumbled upon a discovery that shook her foundation, a long-lost property tied to her family's legacy, hidden amidst the history of Maplewood. This was a responsibility, a potential burden, and a tantalizing opportunity, but it also posed a threat to the life she had built with her husband. Could she reveal this piece of their history without risking judgment? The choice loomed large, pressing against her with every beat of her unsure heart. Returning to Chicago, she felt the two worlds divide her, an internal battle raging between two futures. As she sat across from her husband that evening, his casual banter stark against her turmoil, the silence thickened with unasked questions. Would revealing her discoveries close the chasm of separation or deepen it? Before she could answer herself, the doorbell rang, slicing through the weight of the moment. What awaited her on the other side? The tension prickled in the air, dancing around the edges like wildfire. She approached, heart racing, wondering if the visitor would hold what remained of her past. A letter stamped with the Maplewood postmark rested in their hand. Who was sending a piece of her history back to her now? The pulsing uncertainty left her breathless, an irresistible setup for the truths lurking just beyond her grasp. The fragile envelope trembled in Sarah's hand, the weight of its potential heavy and oppressive. She noticed her husband's inquiring gaze, a blend of concern and curiosity clouding his features. What had started as a casual evening now dripped with tension, the very silence that bore witness to unsaid words growing loud enough to echo in her bones. With trembling fingers, she tore open the letter, her heart drumming a frantic beat against her chest. A deep breath steadied her before she began to read, the familiar scrawl of her mother's handwriting swiftly transporting her back to simpler times, invoking childhood memories layered beneath profound responsibilities. As words flowed, they revealed news of her father's deteriorating health, an unexpected downturn that made her heart ache. They were fragile, merely whispers of the strong man she remembered, and yet more than the worry, they spoke of an ongoing fight that might finally require her intervention. Reality struck her hard. Her life in Chicago, with meetings, deadlines, and courtroom battles, had distanced her from what truly mattered. The relentless ambition that had propelled her forward now felt tainted by her isolation from her family. This realization ignited a fire deep within her. Perhaps this loss was not solely her parents' burden. Perhaps she had chosen to walk away as much as they had let go. After the letter slipped from her fingers, she found herself grappling with uncertainty. Should she respond with urgency, or would that be perceived as panic? The thought of returning to Maplewood caused a whirlwind of emotions. It was a call beckoning her to confront not only her duties as a daughter, but also her own lingering ambitions. She glanced at her husband, his eyes still probing her every move. Uncertainty yielded to resolve, and she spoke. "I need to go back home for a bit," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. His brow furrowed, and she could feel the cascade of questions formulating at the tip of his tongue. "Is everything all right?" he asked, carrying the tone that suggested he already feared the worst. Knowing this wasn't just about her parents, but about the foundation of their own relationship, she hesitated briefly. Would he understand that her journey back to her roots was not just an escape from professional demands, but an exploration of who she had always aspired to be? "I'll explain everything later, I promise. Just trust me," she responded, the determination in her voice providing an anchor amidst the stormy seas of uncertainty. With that, Sarah's resolve deepened. She could not navigate two worlds without confronting the repercussions of her choices. The thought of stepping onto familiar soil again excited and terrified her all at once. In the days that followed, Sarah initiated a meticulous plan to balance her career and familial obligations. She reached out to her senior partner, asking for a brief leave while outlining her commitment to ensure minimal disruption. It involved a careful strategy, blending professional responsibility and personal urgency. It required transparency mixed with the vulnerability she often concealed from others. Meanwhile, moments of introspection surfaced like waves, reminding her of the sacrifices and values that once shaped her identity. What would it mean if she had to choose between her career and her family? The raw honesty of her father's letters emerged in her thoughts, revealing a resonance that echoed her own fears and hopes. Acceptance washed over her as she embraced her dual existence, a strong-willed attorney and a devoted daughter, realizing they did not have to be mutually exclusive. Just as she settled into this newfound clarity, another letter arrived, this one bearing her mother's handwriting again, but the tone was different. It hinted at deeper family secrets interwoven with the very legacy she sought to reclaim. The challenge now intensified. What had her parents hidden from her all these years? With her heart racing anew, Sarah wondered if her journey would lead her to reconnect or unearth more than she was prepared to handle. The weight of revelation drew closer, intensifying the sense of urgency that surrounded her. Would the truth serve to unite or divide? The moment approached when she would have to face the truth's reflection, a chance to redefine not just her family legacy, but her very life. The door to the past creaked open, revealing shadows she had never anticipated. As the plane descended towards Maplewood, Sarah felt the weight of the letters pressing down on her, each revelation drawing her closer to a convergence of past and present. She wondered if this journey would fracture the carefully constructed life she had built, or forge connections she had long neglected. Touching down on familiar ground, she inhaled deeply, letting the scent of pines and distant cedar fill her lungs. Each step towards her childhood home stirred memories. Shadowy figures of her adolescence danced at the edges of her mind, urging her to both remember and forget. Once she arrived, the greeting was subdued. Her mother stood at the doorway, eyes brimming with unshed tears, and Sarah felt the first real pang of guilt. She stepped into the house, and the ambiance enveloped her like a warm blanket, disintegrating the coldness she felt against the city's sharp edges. Yet it was a warmth tinged with the bitterness of unspoken struggles. "Mama," Sarah hesitated, the syllables of the word faltering on her tongue. She had not realized how much she had missed this intimacy, this connection, until she embraced her mother. The strength of the moment ignited a flicker of resolve. "I'm here now." Her mother's broken smile pierced through the cracks of her own insecurities. Just as they settled at the kitchen table, the letter from her mother lay in stark contrast against the polished wood, a reminder of the secrets that shadowed her family. "We need to talk, Sarah," her mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "About your father." The conversation spiraled like a rapidly unwinding thread. Words flowed about hospital visits, treatments that had failed, and the exhaustion of uncertainty. But beneath it all, Sarah noticed a deeper current. The concern etched into her mother's brow didn't solely reflect fear for her husband's health. It radiated an urgency to reveal truths veiled by years of silence. Questions stirred within her. She sought honesty even as deep-seated fears flared at the edges of her consciousness. What else lay beneath the surface? Would her perfect career withstand the existential truths of her family's reality? Days melted into restless nights as Sarah oscillated between cultivating the strength to confront the approaching truths and staving off nagging doubts. The letter hadn't just hinted at hidden struggles. It practically screamed for revelation. What had her parents not told her? Why had those truths been left unspoken for so long? In increasingly honest conversations, Sarah discovered not only the contours of her father's health struggles, but also the depth of hidden desires. She learned that her father, in his quiet way, had nurtured artistic aspirations that were buried under the weight of familial duty. It dawned on her that she had not just distanced herself from family, she had distanced herself from dreams, ones both she and her father had harbored. Feeling the fire of realization spark within her, Sarah began to contemplate a radical shift in her own life, one that encompassed not just legal battles, but also creativity. She decided to explore her father's unexpressed artistic talents, believing they carried fragments of his identity that paralleled her own journey of self-discovery. But the deeper she delved into her family's history, the more questions arose. What secrets had been hidden to ensure stability? As she pieced together fragmented stories, she felt the tension rise, suggesting that the revelations would not be straightforward or easy to bear. The thought of her father, vulnerable and unwell, loomed large, driving her to navigate the fragile waters between competence and connection. In the quiet moments before sleep claimed her, visions of the letter resurfaced, invoking a sense of urgency coursing through her veins. She could no longer ignore the bearing of truths. It was time to confront the shadows and uncertainties that clung to her family. Sarah sat upright, gripping the edges of her sheets as the dawn light filtered through, illuminating the path ahead. The time had come to face the hidden legacies entwined with her life, even if they might shatter the illusions of perfection she had so carefully curated. Would she emerge from this journey with a renewed sense of self, or would the quest for truth reveal sorrows she wasn't prepared to shoulder? The tension was palpable as the day of revelations approached, threatening to reshape not just her family's history, but her own destiny. With her heart thundering in her chest, Sarah made her way to the living room, where family secrets awaited her with bated breath, urging her to unlock the enigmas that lay dormant for too long. The door was ajar, beckoning her with an intensity that promised everything could change with one single act of bravery. What waited beyond that threshold might define the essence of who she was, and who she could yet become. Sarah paused at the living room door, the air heavy with unspoken words. Her heart raced, each beat a reminder of the conversations yet to come. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself before stepping across the threshold into the familiar yet foreign space. It was painted with remnants of her childhood, memories clinging to the walls like old photographs. But today, those memories felt weighted, charged with the tension of impending truths. Seated on the couch, the room echoed with the unresolved stories of her family's past. Her mother had retreated to a chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap, a subtle gesture that underscored her apprehension. Sarah sensed her mother's worry, a palpable reflection of the secrets hidden behind layers of loving resolve. "Can we start with what you mentioned before?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but soft. "About Dad, and what's been going on?" Her mother's gaze dropped, and it felt like a dam had burst within her. "Your father. He struggled with something all these years, something he never wanted anyone to know, least of all you." Her words tumbled out, hesitant yet urgent. "What do you mean?" Sarah pressed, a tightening knot forming in her stomach. She felt the remnants of her confident life in the city slip away, replaced by the vulnerability of family ties. "He's been battling depression, Sarah. I didn't want you to worry, especially with everything else you had going on." The admission hung in the air, heavy and bitter. "But it's more than that. I found out he had a dream, one he set aside to provide for us. He's always had this talent for painting, but life just got in the way." Each revelation peeled back another layer of her father's silent suffering, the thought reverberating in her mind. Could it be that the burdens she so often felt were shared by him? Was there more in their shared shadows than she understood? Slowly she began to realize they were intertwined, grappling with the same pressures while inhabiting separate worlds. "Why didn't he tell me?" The question burst forth, flinging herself into unforeseen confrontation. "I think he wasn't sure how to reach out. He always wanted to protect you from any pain." Her mother's eyes glistened with tears, and Sarah was struck by the duality of their situation, wanting to shield and yet, ultimately, burdening their loved ones with silence. In that moment, Sarah grasped a fundamental truth. She had built walls around her own vulnerabilities, careful to guard her ambitions and fears, fearing that honesty could fracture everything she held dear. Motifs of self-discovery echoed in her mind. Perhaps she and her father weren't so different. "How can I help him?" she asked, determination igniting a fire within her. The longing for connection with her family burned much deeper now, fueled by the desperation of understanding lost dreams. "We could create a space for him, to explore painting again," her mother suggested, a hint of hope in her voice. "He needs to know it's okay to share that part of himself." The idea spiraled in Sarah's mind, taking root. Here was a tangible way to bridge the widening gap she had felt for years. Not just with her father, but her own neglected passions. Could assisting him in reclaiming his art be a catalyst for her to pursue her own? The question became a challenge. With a newfound resolve, Sarah opened up her laptop and began researching local art classes nearby. The prospect excited her, using it as a stepping stone to explore her father's desires while reigniting her own. She scrolled through options, learning about studios that specialized in therapeutic art, spaces dedicated to reclaiming creative expression. As she plotted the plan, another layer of realization seeped in. Maybe this could be the ground she needed to stand up to the career that had consumed her. Maybe it was time to shape her identity, not solely by her profession, but by the fullness of her creative inclinations, just as her father once dreamed. Could it also be her chance to confront the very fears that suffocated her? The thought surged within her. What if she didn't have to achieve perfection at the cost of her authenticity? What if she could embrace her vulnerabilities while helping her father reclaim his? Just as hope began to breathe life anew into the room, her mother's phone buzzed on the table, shattering their precious moment. The message conveyed urgency, a doctor's appointment for her father. Time was slipping away. Would Sarah find the courage to seize her opportunity before it vanished like a whisper in the wind? With determination igniting her heart, Sarah knew she had a choice to make. The path ahead promised growth, but it would demand strength she wasn't sure she possessed. As her fingers hovered over the keyboard, she felt the weight of family legacies pressing in on her. Shadows that needed confronting, stories that needed telling. The room felt charged with potential. The next act of bravery loomed, not just for her father's sake, but for her own rediscovery. What other truths lay ahead? The kind that could shatter or transform their family narrative entirely. The doctor's appointment loomed as a ticking clock in Sarah's mind. Each passing second added weight to her decision-making, the urgency pulsating through her as if echoing her father's silent struggles. She stared at her laptop screen, art classes unfurling before her like a map to a forgotten world. It was a world where creativity flourished, unencumbered by the harsh edges of reality. But could she take that step? Squaring her shoulders, Sarah grappled with self-doubt. Was she equipped to help her father confront the roots of his pain? The fear of failure gnawed at her, yet a distinct whisper in her psyche urged her to move forward. It was time to carve out space for possibilities long extinguished. Sarah recalled their past family outings to museums, her father's enthusiasm abandoning him in the blur of adulthood's obligations. He had once whisked them into the masterpieces, eyes alight with promise. Wasn't it time to rekindle that spark? In the midst of navigating her thoughts, she realized they could embark on this journey together, not as parent and child merely, but as fellow artists, a shared experience redefining their bond. Minutes later, she found herself scrawling a list, a tentative plan unfolding. Step 1. Approach her father. Step 2. Propose engaging in a painting class together. Step 3. Support him in overcoming the fears that had stifled his voice. But before she could solidify her approach, another layer of anxiety crept in. What if her father rejected the idea, viewing it as pity rather than an invitation? No, she would have to frame it differently, emphasize the personal growth it could bring them both. She would present it not just as a means of healing, but also as a reclamation of their identities. Two lost souls finding their way back to art. Her resolve solidified, pushing fear to the corner. Sarah picked up her phone and texted her mother. "Do you think Dad would be open to an art class? Something just for us?" The thought of venturing into this territory was unsettling, yet liberating. Would her mother see the value in this process too? Moments later, a response came through. "I think he'd love that. Just remember, be gentle with him. It's going to take time." Gentle. The word resonated deeply. She could approach her father with kindness rather than confrontation. This wasn't just about art. It was about giving him room to breathe again, to express himself without judgment. Their shared dreams forged a connection she desperately craved, an outlet giving voice to both their insecurities and aspirations. Sarah licked her lips, the notion of vulnerability sparking a warmth in her chest. What became increasingly clear was that each brushstroke could also help reclaim her sense of self, her long-ignored ambitions clamoring for attention. As she gathered her thoughts and prepared for their evening conversation, she felt a shift within herself. This wasn't merely about healing her father's wounds. It was about peeling back layers of her own experience, one hesitant stroke at a time. Just as the art she sought to engage in would require boldness and authenticity, so too did her journey toward professional fulfillment. In that moment, a realization swept over her. Every surface she painted together could symbolize the restoration of their lives. The act alone could redefine their past, reshaping the family narrative she'd spent so long exploring and questioning. But as she sat there in the living room, a sudden text from her phone illuminated the dim space, startling her from her thoughts. It was an email notification from her job, demanding an urgent meeting regarding her performance. A cold wave of anxiety washed over her, reminding Sarah of the unrelenting expectations she faced in her career. The world outside seemed to collide with her internal struggle as she was thrust back into the professional pressures she had hoped to escape. "Just when I thought I could finally breathe," she whispered under her breath, grappling with the tension she felt. From her career expectations, from the complexities of family, and from her own aspirations. How would she balance this emerging personal journey while confronting the stark realities of her professional life? What would it take for Sarah to find equilibrium amidst the storm? The moment for clarity was drawing closer, and she could sense the looming confrontation ahead, a test of her resilience and resolve. So much lay ahead, and Sarah understood one undeniable truth. She was on the precipice of change, but with the shadows of doubt still lurking, would she find the courage to challenge herself in every facet of her existence? The clock continued to tick, and with time drawing short, Sarah felt the weight of her choices pressing ever more heavily on her shoulders. The day arrived with a gray sky outside, mirroring the apprehension twisting in Sarah's gut. She stared at the meeting link on her computer, knowing the virtual room would soon fill with the echoes of expectations and demands. It was a pivotal moment, not just for her career but for her burgeoning identity as a person willing to claim her voice, reclaim her passions, and redefine what success meant to her. As the meeting began, she forced herself to focus on the screen, hyper-aware of her colleagues' expressions. Questions flitted around like restless butterflies, and Sarah found herself holding her breath with each passing moment. The lead manager's voice seemed to resonate with judgment, each comment stinging like a paper cut. "Sarah, we've noted some inconsistencies in your recent project submissions," he began, his tone clinical, probing. "Can you provide us with insight into the challenges you're facing?" The inquiry hung heavy in the air, a tightrope she felt forced to walk between honesty and the overwhelming pressure to fit into an image of competence. Her heart raced as she contemplated her response. Should she deliver a rehearsed excuse or confront the reality of her circumstances? It was a choice that not only pertained to her career, but also reflected her journey of self-discovery. "Honestly, I have been struggling to juggle my responsibilities here while navigating some personal challenges," she said, surprising even herself with the candor. "I'm not afraid to admit that I've felt overwhelmed." The words landed, raw and vulnerable, opening a door she had long kept shut. Silence enveloped the room for a heartbeat, before nods of understanding flickered across the faces of her colleagues. Sarah's breath hitched as she realized that her moment of vulnerability had transformed the atmosphere. She wasn't alone in this experience. The facade of unyielding professionalism began to dissolve, revealing a shared human struggle. "Thank you for your honesty, Sarah. It takes courage to speak up." The manager's voice softened. That small acknowledgement created an unexpected ripple, weaving a thread of connection between them. The meeting morphed from a formal interrogation to a collaboration focused on support and growth. By the time their discussion concluded, Sarah felt lighter, as if a weight had begun to lift from her shoulders. Could it be that her professional life was beginning to mirror the emotional openness she sought to cultivate in her personal life? In that moment, she had chosen bravery over conformity, honoring both her vulnerability and aspiration. However, the discussion left her contemplating a deeper question. How could she integrate this newfound courage into her family dynamics? Her father's untapped creativity and her own struggles converged into a resolve she hadn't fully grasped until that moment. She left the meeting invigorated yet curious. How would her next conversation with her father unfold? What more would she discover about him and herself when they stepped into that art studio together? As the clock ticked onward, Sarah felt a determination bubble to the surface. The next step was approaching, and she was ready to confront not only the shadows of her father's past, but also those that lingered in her own. The idea of reaching out to her father felt less intimidating now. She envisioned the empty canvas waiting for their brushstrokes, a collaborative space where both of their voices could be expressed freely. But what if he resisted? She could plan for that, anticipate the tension. The fear still simmered beneath her excitement. As she set her sights on the evening, she wondered how to frame her proposal in a way that honored both their journeys. But a resolve began to settle within her. This project was as much about her growth as it was about helping her father. Change was not something to shy away from. It was the path to creation and discovery. With a steady hand, Sarah reached for her phone, her fingers hovering above the screen. Just then, a fresh wave of uncertainty struck. What if this endeavor failed? But with every ounce of self-awareness wrapped in determination, she reminded herself that risk was essential to growth. It was time to take the plunge. But as she contemplated her next move, a faint sound from the living room caught her attention. A thud, then silence. The moment of truth was arriving, but would she be ready to embrace it? The thud from the living room echoed in Sarah's mind, pulling her from her swirling thoughts. It felt like a sign, a manifestation of her growing urgency. Taking a steadying breath, she set her phone down and ventured toward the sound, her heart drumming an anxious rhythm against her chest. Entering the living room, she found her father sitting in his usual armchair, a sketchpad resting awkwardly in his lap. His eyes were fixed on the blank page, brows furrowed in concentration. It struck her that this was perhaps the first time she was seeing him like this, not merely as her father, but as an artist wrestling with their own inner voice. "Dad," she spoke softly, willing him to look away from the white canvas that intimidated both of them in different ways. His gaze lifted, and for a moment, she saw hesitation. It mirrored her own apprehensive feelings about their upcoming conversation. "Sarah," he replied almost mechanically. "What brings you here?" She paused, weighing her words. "I wanted to talk about something significant. It's about us, our art, our creativity. I have an idea that I think could help both of us find our voices again." His expression shifted, a blend of wariness and curiosity crossing his features. "What do you mean?" Sarah felt the weight of that blank page between them. It was both a barrier and an opportunity. "I think we should work together, create something side by side. I want to explore sharing our experiences, our frustrations, through art." His eyes narrowed slightly, skepticism simmering beneath the surface. "And what makes you think I can contribute anything worth sharing?" The question landed hard, stirring a familiar mix of irritation and hurt within her. Yet instead of retreating into defensiveness, she steadied her breath, channeling the boldness she had discovered in the meeting. "Because I know there's a part of you that wants to express yourself. I've seen your sketches, Dad. They're filled with emotion, but you hide them away." His posture stiffened, arms crossing over his chest, creating a physical distance that felt heavy. "It's been so long since I've picked up a brush. I don't know if it's really worth it." In that moment, she sensed the parallel paths they were on, both struggling under the weight of self-doubt, afraid to break the silence that had settled in the wake of their individual failures and disappointments. It wasn't just about creativity. It was a conversation about reclamation, of dreams deferred and passions dimmed. "But we do know how to start," she pressed. "And that's the first step, isn't it?" The tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. Sarah could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind. It was the dilemma that both paralyzed and motivated them, challenging the narrative they had built around themselves. "Maybe," he conceded cautiously. "But what if we can't get there? What if it ends up as just another disappointment?" Sarah felt the familiar flicker of doubt within herself, yet she was determined not to let that overshadow her newfound courage. "But we could also surprise ourselves. There's only one way to find out, right?" Her father's expression softened for the briefest of moments, a flicker of vulnerability peeking through his armor. "I'll think about it," he replied, but there was something in his tone that suggested he might have already begun to reconsider. As Sarah left the living room, her heart was buoyed by a tentative sense of hope. Yet, the day's revelations uncovered more than just her relationship with her father. They unearthed corners of her own creative spirit that longed for freedom. Would bridging that gap between them encourage her to confront the shadows of her own artistry? With every step toward her own canvas, anticipation mingled with the unresolved tension between them. Would their collaboration prove fruitful, or would the fears that once held them captive come crashing down again? The evening wore on, but Sarah's heart raced with both possibilities and the weight of her father's insecurities. How could she navigate their fragile dynamic while nurturing her own growing fears? As the clock neared midnight, an idea flickered to life in her mind. What if their first piece together didn't require perfection? What if it simply required presence, an honest attempt at connection? The urgency to find out pulsed through her veins. Before she could second-guess herself, she opened her sketchbook and began to draw, her pencil gliding across the paper with surprising ease. Yet, just as the outlines of colors came alive, a sudden, unexpected vibration from her phone interrupted the atmosphere. What news awaited her that might realign the course she had just begun to chart? The screen lit up with a notification, the long-awaited response from the art collective she had submitted to weeks earlier. A mixture of dread and exhilaration twisted in her stomach as she hesitated, pencil hovering above the page. Just moments ago, she had rekindled a flicker of inspiration, and now uncertainty threatened to snuff it out. "Is this the news that will change everything?" she whispered to herself. With a deep breath, she surrendered to the temptation and glanced at her phone. The email read like a formal invitation wrapped in gauzy hope. Her application had been accepted. The accompanying message extolled her creativity, hinting at the potential they saw in her work. They invited her to present an exhibition piece, a chance to step into the limelight at an event dedicated to emerging artists. As joy cascaded through her, a surprising undercurrent of anxiety threaded its way through the exhilaration. This was not just her moment, it was also a test. "Am I ready?" she questioned, glancing at her father's sketchpad, an open slate of possibility. While rising excitement beckoned her, the thrill of the collective's acknowledgement was not without skepticism. What if she failed to live up to their expectations? What if her father saw her effort as a distraction from what they were trying to build together? In a heartbeat, the edges of her enthusiasm blurred, revealing a fear of disappointing both herself and the hopeful connection with her dad. This moment was less about recognition and more about growth, a reflection of her journey, and a leap toward an identity she had long neglected. What if the show could also act as the catalyst for their collaboration? The vision crept into her thoughts, their collective struggles woven together on a shared canvas. Settling into a tumultuous rhythm of excitement mixed with anxiety, Sarah grabbed her sketchbook and revisited her earlier idea. The prospect of exploring their vulnerabilities together was still fresh. Perhaps the exhibition could provide the nudge they both needed. In the margins of her sketches, she began outlining concepts not only for her own piece, but also for what they could create together. The idea of a dual exhibition emerged, one that paired her father's raw emotions with her burgeoning stylistic expressions. The need for collaboration thrummed in her chest like the heartbeat of a new idea. Yet, as she scribbled down her thoughts, another unwelcome pang of doubt surfaced. Would her father accept the idea? Would he see the potential for his own healing through their mutual creativity, or would he still clutch the safety of self-doubt? The looming uncertainty of their relationship shifted like shadows cast by a flickering flame. She recalled the hesitation in his gaze from earlier, the tight embrace of his skepticism, and felt a surge of resolve that accompanied her decision to press forward. If she could lean into her own insecurities, he might find the courage in her vulnerability to do the same. With the clock ticking toward dawn and her mind racing, Sarah resolved to bring the idea to him. She had to build a bridge between her burgeoning ambition and the fears tethering him. The journey they would embark on could be as profound as it was messy, but it was time to dismantle the barriers. As she revised her sketches into proposals, the weight of impending challenge transformed into exhilarating pressure. She had taken the first step toward her development, inwardly and outwardly. However, the moment of truth lay ahead. Would she gather the courage to present her bright vision for their collaboration, or would the shadow of fear cast doubt over their shared aspirations? And as the first light of dawn broke through the window, Sarah grabbed her phone, adrenaline surging. She needed to text her father. In that instant, her thumb hovered over the screen, uncertain. Would this be a moment of connection, or one more chance for rejection? The sunlight flooded the room, illuminating the scattered sketches that had become a silent chorus of her thoughts. Sarah exhaled deeply, feeling the blend of excitement and trepidation coiling tightly in her stomach. Each proposal she had drafted whispered promises of growth and newfound identity. And yet, it felt like a fragile thread, easily frayed by one misstep. With resolve, she opened her messaging app. Her fingers trembled as they danced over the keyboard, crafting a message laden with both hope and fear. "Dad, can we talk about something important? I have an idea." She hit send, and immediately there was a pit of anxiety in her stomach. The moment of vulnerability pressed heavily on her chest. She was inviting him into her world, a world where she sought to bridge their emotional distance, but also where she feared rejection. Minutes felt like hours as she paced her cluttered studio. Every shadow that flickered along the walls reminded her of the risks she was about to take. It was as if fear lurked in every corner, ready to pounce on her fragile courage. What if she had miscalculated? She had spent so long internalizing the hesitations of her father. Perhaps now she exaggerated their power. When her phone chimed with a response, her heart raced. "What's this about?" His tone was cautious, and she read it as a sign of uncertainty, both his and her own. Could he sense her desperation? What if he dismissed her idea as just another fleeting whim? Summoning every ounce of confidence, Sarah replied, "I think we should create something together, a piece that reflects us, our struggles, our growth." She almost added more about her vision but stripped it down to the bare essentials, terrified of overwhelming him. Moments slipped by as she awaited his reply, the silence stretching uncomfortably. With each passing second, insecurities came crashing back, overwhelming her resolve. Perhaps this was just a distraction. Maybe he wouldn't comprehend the change she sought. Or worse, he could see it as a rejection of their current path, the one they had walked together for so long. Then, her phone vibrated, and she immediately grabbed it. "I'm not an artist like you. We are trying to build something here." The words stung, a reminder of the very boundaries she aimed to dismantle. Each syllable triggered a tidal wave of emotions. They were trapped in a cycle of fear, unable to speak plainly about their desires. Sarah closed her eyes, envisioning all the times they had been unable to connect, a gallery of missed opportunities displayed in her mind. But what choice did she have? Was she to let his fears dictate her own aspirations? Bracing for what was yet to come, she crafted her response carefully, keeping her tone gentle, yet firm. "I want to share this journey with you, to create something that represents both of us. I know it's daunting, but this could be a chance to heal, to be vulnerable together." As she sent the message, a weight lifted just a fraction. Declaring her desires openly had laid the groundwork for what could become a necessary confrontation. At heart, she understood that this wasn't merely about art. It was about redefining their relationship, forging ahead despite the shadows of doubt. A few nerve-wracking minutes later, her phone buzzed again. "Okay, I'll think about it." Was that a sign of openness, or merely a preservation of distance? Exhilaration flickered within her, tempered by the uncertainty still draped over her heart. Thinking could lead to either acceptance or further hesitation. Sarah knew now that she had to confront both her own fears and the possibility of his ambivalence. The path forward was still tumultuous, with the terrain of their relationship riddled with unspoken emotions. She felt a flicker of determination ignite within her, the fire in her heart urging her on. But as the day melted into evening, revealing the complexities ahead, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the first step. The true reckoning still awaited them, shadows of their fractured histories lingering ominously. What answers would emerge when she finally confronted the depths of their struggles together? Or would both their energies pull too tightly in different directions, unraveling the fragile thread she had begun to weave? Sarah stood in the quiet of her childhood home, a new resolve surging within her. Days of deep conversation with her father had unearthed not only his hidden dreams, but also her own, igniting a yearning for connection that had long been buried. She recalled her father's hesitant agreement to explore art together, an opportunity to reclaim lost parts of themselves through creative expression. As the sun rose, Sarah picked up her sketchbook and spent the morning drafting their collaborative project. She envisioned bright color palettes and unrestrained brushstrokes echoing their unspoken feelings, a physical manifestation of their intertwined journeys. Each stroke became more than just art. It was a bridge, a connection formed through shared vulnerabilities. In that moment, she understood that she was not merely helping her father heal, she was reconstructing her own identity outside the constraints of past expectations. Tension still bubbled beneath the surface. Would her father truly commit to this endeavor? Though they had communicated openly, the fragility of their dynamic still caused her heart to race at the thought of any misstep. The reflections in her sketchbook stared back at her, vibrant yet tinged with the fear of disappointment. Would she falter at this chance for permanence? But the opportunity to present their piece at the exhibition was looming. Her identity as an artist craved this validation. It was time to live fiercely, leaving behind the constraints that had stifled her voice for so long. As invitations were sent, she felt a thrilling yet daunting echo reverberating through her. Time was of the essence, but so was the urgency to embrace the moment. Their first joint painting session was set for that evening, and anticipation charged the air. She arrived early, surrounding herself with the tools of creativity, creating a vibrant space filled with color and warmth. Each moment heightened her excitement. This was their chance to connect, to unearth stories and fears that had lingered too long in silence. Her father stepped into the room, apprehensive yet hopeful. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, a hint of uncertainty lacing his words. "More than ever," she responded, meeting his hesitant gaze with unwavering determination. This was the moment she had envisioned, where they could dismantle the barriers they had both erected over years. As they layered the canvas with their respective colors, a sense of freedom coursed through her, intermingled with what felt like a renaissance. With every stroke, they opened up, talking about the frustrations of missed opportunities and aspirations pushed aside. It was a raw and transformative exchange that would ultimately redefine their dynamic. "Do you remember the stories Mom used to tell us about your art?" Sarah asked. A smile of nostalgia formed. The reflective conversation led them to reminisce about their shared past, softening any lingering tension between them. "I'd forgotten so much," her father replied, his voice laden with gratitude and regret. "I painted to escape, but then life just got complicated." "Isn't that why we're here? To escape into a new beginning?" Sarah encouraged, her heart alight with shared purpose. Hours passed as laughter intertwined with the paint, a contrast from the weight of unsaid words. The painting began to evolve, revealing layers of emotions, hints of their struggles etched into the canvas. It was more than just art. It was a shared journey to reclaim part of themselves, and an acknowledgement that facing fears could indeed lead to catharsis. As they stood back to assess their creation, pride surged in Sarah's chest. She saw not only vibrant colors, but a visual representation of their collaborative healing, their intertwined stories preserved in art. In that moment, she felt solid confidence, both as an artist and as a daughter. The invitation sent out for the upcoming exhibition yielded not only excitement, but the inaugural taste of recognition for both Sarah and her father, for they had embraced their legacy in ways they had never anticipated. Feedback poured in. Their collaborative piece was not just relevant, but resonated deeply with the audience, sparking conversations about familial ties, shared artistry, and vulnerabilities essential for healing. "Would you look at that?" her father mused. Sarah could see new light in his eyes, unfamiliar, yet electric. "You did it, Dad. We did it," she replied, her voice trembling with a mix of joy and relief. Realizing their connection extended beyond the confines of the painting, a new chapter opened, a reinvigorated relationship bound by creativity instead of silence. As they prepared to enter the exhibition space, a quiet determination settled in Sarah. She had conquered her fears, proved herself both in her professional and personal life, allowing her talents to blend seamlessly with her heritage. Her identity had evolved from a corporate persona to an empowered artist, a journey leading her towards greater fulfillment and connection. Pressure still persisted in the edge of her consciousness, but she understood it now as evidence of growth. Feedback from her exhibition could reinforce her place as an artist, fostering deeper connections within herself and with her family. This was her moment, the fulfilled recognition of her journey. With her father by her side, Sarah stepped into a future vibrant with possibilities, ready to confront the lingering shadows once cast and embrace an identity no longer chained by the expectations of the past. And as Sarah smiled at her father, she understood this journey had not merely been about the artwork. It was a concrete proof of growth, of two individuals finally rising above their struggles and embracing the legacies they were meant to share. So here, in a gallery filled with light and acknowledgement, they stood as proud co-creators, ready to claim the life they had reshaped through art. The moment felt holistic and fulfilled, echoing with the promise of further connections to be made. Now was the time when she was truly herself, and she wanted the world to witness it, the commencement of a story, woven artfully through resilience and the bonds they forged anew. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.